let's get started. Just some basic background. So if you don't already know, Vidyo.io is a platform as a service using which you can add multi-party video chat into your application with just a few API calls. We support both native and WebRTC, mobile devices, that too native, and WebRTC in mobile as well. So if you want to give it a shot, the best way is to go to our website, Vidyo.io. You can sign up. Once you sign up, you get around 4,000 or so free minutes to try things, to try it out in your application. Also, there's a very cool demo link on our website. When you click on the demo page, it immediately launches you into a video conferencing website. You can put in your name, the room name, and you can just sign in and try out for free how the video conferencing would look when you build your own website or application. So give it a shot. Other important resource that you'd find is on our how-to videos. I've done a couple of webinars talking about introduction to Vidyo.io, a basic sort of a webinar where I talk about the different components of our platform and how it works and how you can get started in your website or application. There are other cool topics are around tokens. We get a lot of questions around what are tokens, how they are used. So I have some videos on that as well. So apart from that, there are also some samples you can download from GitHub in various languages. Some samples target custom layout, some samples target deployment using on a Google App Engine and all that. So check out our GitHub page. Maybe you'll find what you're building. You might find an existing sample already, which will even reduce your ramp up and development time. And apart from that, we also have samples in our packages in the platform you're interested in. So say you're building a video chat in a Windows machine, then we have a package for C. We're also having a upcoming package on C#. If you're building it on Mac machines, then you'll have a package for Mac devices, for web, for JavaScript, mobile, etc. So all the packages not only come with the library that you can include in your deployment, but also a sample which shows you exactly how to use that library. So with that, let's get started with today's topic, right? What we're building today, the focus is on building a group chat in your video chat API. So we all know once you start with Vidyo.io, you integrate with Vidyo.io, you'll have video chat, so you can talk just like this, but you also can easily add group chat in your application. So I'm going to take you to the steps that's involved in building this, and I'll show you a sample and a demo, and also how you can overload this chat to do something more than just doing a group chat. You can do maybe one-on-one, maybe you can send more information, some data, some control elements and all that. So we'll look at that in detail. So the very first thing you need to do now, what's the first step, is to include Vidyo.io in your application. So I'm going to show you two samples. Right now there is on the screen you see JavaScript and Objective-C. But if this is not the language or the platform you're building on, don't worry about it. If you go to our website, Vidyo.io, and you go to the documentation page, you can choose the language you want, and we have samples for that language. And chat is also covered on that website. So if you are working something, say on Java, for example, so don't worry about it. Go to the website, select Java as your language, and you'll see samples in Java around chat and how to include and all that. So, okay, so coming back to the very first step, what do you need to do? You need to include the library. So on a web development, how that looks like is you will have your HTML page, you'll have your JavaScript code, which runs on the client side. So just like every other script, all you need to do is include the script tag. And once you include the script tag, our client, the JavaScript file, once you point to it, will get loaded. Note the version number in the script tab. If one thing you could do to always get the latest one is type in latest over there. That way is every time you'll get the latest script file. But if you want to do some testing on the version, we recommend signing into a particular package version, and when you want to update the version, updating the file script number over here, and then doing some testing and then deploying it. On the Objective-C side, all you need to do is include the header files. There are also obviously some steps where you download and put the framework in your Xcode library. I won't go into much detail on that, but if you're interested in knowing how to do that, I'd again recommend going to our website and going to our how to videos page, where you can choose where Phil, in fact, has done a 9-minute video where he starts from ground up, starts up an Xcode project and includes the framework and builds an application. So I recommend taking a look at that. But the basic gist is you include the library. Once you've included the library, the step 2 is you initialize Vidyo.io. Note on JavaScript, it's empty. What it means is when you actually include our source file, this video client.js, in that file itself, we immediately initialize. We immediately initialize, and what we do is the success or failure code of that initialization is passed in the video client loaded callback. So you define a function, callback function, and we'll pass the information if you failed or passed. So you don't need to do step 2 in JavaScript. So that's only for other languages. In Objective-C, you will call a separate video client connector initialize explicitly to initialize it. Once that's done, 2 easy steps. The next step will be to create a video connector object. This video connector object will be your main object where you will be joining rooms, listening to different events, registering for different events, and making calls like sending chat messages, etc. So this is pretty much the main object you need to create when you want to connect to Vidyo.io. Creating it is pretty straightforward. You call create video connector function, both in JavaScript or, say, in this case, in Objective-C. The create function, what it does is it takes in a view ID. What this view ID is basically where you want to render your screen. You give it the view style. Default is what we'll go for over here. Basically, default is it'll do the Hollywood styles when they're multiple. If there are 2 people, there'll be a picture-in-picture representation. You give the maximum number of participants you want to draw. That's the remote participants number over here. Same in Objective-C. You can give the log file filter. Typically in production, you probably give warning. But if you want some full detailed log information, you can just put info over here, and it will print out a very verbose log from our library. And you can give a custom file name and some custom user data if you're interested. And that's about it. You call this function, the video connector object will be created. In JavaScript, we have this promise pattern where you save it over here. In Objective-C, it will be stored in this video connector object over here. Simple as that. So once you're done with step 3, the next thing you do is connect to a video conference. Again, pretty straightforward. All we've done is we've initialized, created an object, and now we're going to call a connect, and that's all you need to join into our video room. I'll quickly go through the parameters that this function takes. The very first thing is which server. It's called the host. It's called, in most of the production, it'll be prod.video.io. So you can use that. Second is the token. Token is one of the most important parameters that we need to pass in. I've done a separate webinar on token generation, so I dive into detail in that webinar, but for time's sake, I'll just quickly mention what it is. Token is basically a short authentication credential. So what's happening over here is, say, when you put this code on your client and device, your users will launch your application or launch your website and say, hey, I want to connect to Vidyo.io, right? They'll click a button or something, and you will call this function connect. Now, when it Vidyo on the backend needs to know if this user is authenticated and who is representing this user, right? To know that the user is trying to connect on your behalf on a particular video room. How do we know that? Is by passing this token. To generate a token, we have multiple scripts. You can again go on our website and look at the token section in the documentation, and we have scripts in Python, in JavaScript, in Java, etc. So what it does, it takes your developer ID, it takes your application ID, it takes the username and how long the token is valid for, and it signs it. It basically signs using your developer key, the other parameters. And then it creates an alphanumeric string, and you pass that alphanumeric string out here. I'll show a code sample and how that looks as well. So basically, once you get the alphanumeric string, you pass it down here, and you join a room. Again, to summarize what's happening, this connect call is you're joining a room. The room name, depending on what you pass in the resource ID, it's going to connect you to that room. So if you have two devices, say one is on your mobile device and one is from your web page, and two different users are joining in, one is Sachin Web, other is Sachin iOS. As long as they're joining the same resource ID, they're joining the same room. Oh, as you can see here, their two rooms are different, so they'll be in different rooms, but you get the message. So if they want to be in the same room, you'll have to put demo room or John Smith room on both sides. So that's about it. And then they'll be in the room. All right, so when this happens, you're basically in a video conference where you will have the audio, video, visual going on, and you can see the other participant, etc. Now, if you want to send in, type in messages, if you want to put in chat messages in it, again, very simple. In JavaScript, as we saw, our video connector object, our main object over here, there is a method register message event listener on it. So you register for your events, calling this register message event listener, and then the callback you have is called on chat message received. Very simple. Call this function, and within you're defining your function over here to what you want to do when you get the chat message, right? So you'll get two basically parameters in this function. One is the participant, where you'll have information of which participant originated this message. So if I send a message using the send chat message call, and I say hello, and I send that across, everybody else will get this event. You'll have this event fired on chat message received. In their participant object, they'll get information about me saying that, hey, Sachin, that's the participant, there's a participant ID, there's a participant name, etc. So you can get that information and display it. And the chat message itself is basically a string, and you can just display that string message. So in this case, when I send a hello message, chat message will contain this string hello. That's it, it's a string. So straightforward as that. We'll look at this on the Objective-C side. Very similar thing to do. We are going to register for our message event listener. In this case, we have to implement a protocol. So it's basically an interface. And the interface method is the on chat message received method. Again, the same two parameters. It's very consistent across both the platforms. On JavaScript, it looks the same. On Objective-C, it looks the same. And every other platform is going to look the same. So you'll get the participant chat message. The chat message again will have it will basically have a body structure. I misspoke earlier. The chat message will have hello in it, but it'll be chat message.body. So we'll see in the code exactly how that is. But chat message's structure and the string will be within its body elements. It'll be chat message.body will contain hello. So that's about it. That's all you need to do for add group chat into your application. You need to listen to the event by calling register message event listener, and once you get that message, you need to go into the chat message object or structure and say get the dot body, and then represent the message that you get across. That's about it. Same thing in JavaScript. You do the same thing, and to send the message, you just call send chat message. So let's quickly look at the actual code and how things look. So the very first thing I'm going to show you is our video connector sample, which I've downloaded from our website. You go to Vidyo.io, downloads, you can get the package for iOS out there. That's what I did. And I modified the code a bit over there. I went to the video view controller.m method file, and I made some changes. And I'll go through the changes over here. So as we spoke about earlier, once the very first thing that you do when you, one of the first things that you do when you want to connect with Vidyo.io is you initialize it, and then you create the video connector object. Okay, so once we connected the video connector object, in our case over here, we are interested in registering for the chat messages, right? So all you need to do is call VC register message event listener. VC is our variable name. You can call it video connector. So just call register message event listener. And in this case, the object that implements the protocol is self, is this object. So if you go back to video controller.h, you can see over here, I've implemented the register message event listener interface. And so what that entails is in that protocol, we just have one method to implement, and that is on chat message received. So once we have that, it's down here. So all we have to implement is the on chat message received, and we display it. So I'm going to show, this has some advanced things over here, which I'll go through later on. But before that, I'm going to switch to JavaScript, right? So what we did in iOS, we're going to do something very similar in JavaScript as well. Here we're going to register for receiving messages. In JavaScript, what I've done is I've done this right after the connect method. There's no real correct way to doing it. We're probably doing it before makes more sense because you already have the object registered for the events. But keep in mind that you only get chat messages once you've joined a room. You cannot send or receive chat messages if you're not joined a room, because the way the chat messages the way it works is it sends the message to everybody in a particular room. So as long as you're inside a room, you can send a message and it will go to everybody. It'll get broadcasted to everybody. So you can even if you do it before connecting to a room or after, it doesn't matter, because the events will only get fired once the connection is successful. So in this case, what I've done is once the connection is successful, I've checked the status. If it looks all good, that's when I call my method called receive message, right? Receive message does nothing but basically calls the method that we looked at earlier, register message event listener. And in the JavaScript promise pattern, what we're doing is we have the on chat message received defined right here. Once we get it, the only thing I do is I have my own internal method which populates, which enqueues the message into the UI. That's it. As I was mentioning before, I check for the body. This contains the actual string message, and I display it in my UI. I also get the participant ID and name. And in my logic, what I do is, depending on if it's the participant is somebody else, I show their name saying, hey, like Ben said this or Sachin said that. And if it's the same participant, if I'm sending the message, I'll show it on the right-hand side. If somebody else is sending a message, I'll show it on the left-hand side. So that's basically what's happening. So we'll do a quick demo of how this looks, this JavaScript page looks like. So I'm going to go back to my demo app. What I'll do is I'm going to stop sharing my code screen, and I'm going to share my Google Chrome. All right. So that's the file I was working on. I've deployed it locally on my end. Hey, Ben. Sorry about that. You got to mute, I guess, the microphone on your end if there's an echo. So here's the chat window over here, right? So if I say hi, or yeah, hi, Ben, how are you? I type this over here. I say send, goes across. What happens is I'm calling the, oh, there you go, howdy, Ben. So he returns back using this howdy message. So basically what's happening is I'm calling the send message over here, and on the receive, I get it. Oh, good to know, Ben. I'll just say thanks and send this across. That's about it. There you go. So this was pretty straightforward over here. So that's all there is to it. You basically send a message using the string, and then you show it. And this sample code that I'm running over here that I've deployed is on GitHub. Again, the place that is GitHub/Vidyo, Vidyo.io, I think. If you go to that page, you'll you'll have this sample deployed, and you can look at how it across. You can take a look at that as well. Coming back to our presentation. All right, so that was a pretty straightforward implementation of chat, right? All you do is send, and you receive, and you display. But as we discussed before, this message is sent to everybody, and everybody can view it and see it. What if you wanted to do something more than just chat messages? What if you wanted to do more individual chats between person to person, or if you wanted to do something like send other, since it's a data stream where you can use this channel to send some information across other than chat messages. So how do we do something like that? So what I've done in my case is I've made use of a JSON structure. So instead of sending the message as is, I actually send a JSON string, data through a JSON string on my chat message. I've defined a few structures over here. Like instead of sending hello world directly, I define a JSON string where I define a type as public chat, and I say I'll send a message hello world in that sense. Another example is if I wanted to do more individually targeted app in my application, even though everybody gets the payload, only if my user ID matches, that's when I display the message. So that way is I define a type called individual chat. I say which person I'm talking to, I set to the user ID on the sending side, and I send the message hello world or something over there. And on the receiving side, only if my user ID matches, only then I'll show the message. So that's kind of a basic way where you can have, instead of having a more public chat, where broadcasted chat where everybody sees the message, you can have more one-on-one even within the room. Granted that this is still sent everybody everywhere else, and if you're concerned about, hey, they might change the JavaScript, they might look at it, read it and all that, you could always encrypt this as well. So you can be more proactive about that. Apart from just chat again, we could also use this for other control elements, right? So you could also use this to have your applications communicate with each other within the video room. You may have your own communication channel where you use that, but if you don't, you can always use this as a communication channel. So in this case, what I've done is I defined a type called control, and the subtype is disconnect all. So imagine a scenario where I have a physician-patient kind of scenario where one is more of an admin user against the other. And if I am the, say, physician and I'm having a video chat with a patient and I want to have the control of disconnecting the meeting, I can send a message called disconnect all, and everybody else will, when they get this message, the application will disconnect on the user's behalf. So you can send some control messages. You can also do something more smart, like sending some mute, individual mute controls. So you can say, hey, I'm defining this JSON string where it's a control type, where the subtype is mute a particular individual or mute everybody. And you can either have everybody mute or you can have a targeted person mute. So that way is you can look at a particular list of participants and mute and unmute somebody from an admin page. So you can add this logic in your application. Another use case of using this chat as a data channel is sending some files or images between. So in my example, which I just showed between the JavaScript and iOS, what I did was I used this string, I used it to send some information about a particular request. So the scenario I'm looking at is, say you're at, it's like a insurance company where they're having a sale, or where the claims person is having a talk with the customer and they're trying to say, hey, I had this damage, I'm doing a video conference, and the claims person wants to take a picture of it. So you can send a request saying, hey, I want a snapshot of what I'm looking at right now. And on my application end, I'll take a picture of it and send that file across using uploading it to Amazon and sending a link across. So I can do something smarter in that sense. So I'll show you a demo. I'll show you a demo around this right now, so you know what I'm talking about. I'll do a screen share again. Let's do the entire screen. All right. So in this case, the difference is when I am receiving a chat message, right? So instead of directly displaying the string as is, I am now, what I do is in my application, I'll always send it as a JSON structure. So I'll check for a valid JSON structure, and then depending on the type, I'll do a few different things. In this case, I will look at two particular types of messages. One is a snapshot request, which the scenario is, again, I'm on a mobile device and say a doctor or somebody else is looking at my camera and they want to take they're requesting a snapshot of something. So I send that and get that request and I take action depending on it. So here in this code, which I'll share later on, what I do is I take control of the camera, take a picture, and then I send it across back to the requesting party, again in the form of a JSON string. So if I look at send message, send chat message out here, So when I get a request, I take a picture and when I'm sending that, I create another JSON structure. This time it's going to be a snapshot response. And I set the target ID, resource ID, and I send it the Amazon resource URL for them to display. So that's what this is doing on this end. And on the other side, on the website, again, we saw earlier that before all we did when we got a chat message is we displayed on my custom on-send message method. But instead of doing that, what I can do next is I can again look for a JSON structure. And depending on if it's a known type, I can do some actions within. Either I can just treat it as a text message, or I can do something smarter. And what I've also done on this end over here is I've added two more send, overloaded the send method as well. One is basically requesting the image. So I added a button call for a snapshot request. And when I click that button, I create the snapshot request type. I say which user I want the snapshot from. Here I've hard-coded it, but you could obviously select the user and add more logic there. And the source ID, I've just put something random for now. But you could put in the source ID who's requesting it, and I send this across. Similarly, the other thing I've done is I've treated the website as an admin person. If the website user disconnects from the meeting, I want everybody else to disconnect as well. So when they toggle the state to disconnect, I send a message saying disconnect all, so that everybody else in the room will honor that and disconnect as well. So let's look at this in action again, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my meeting room over here. I will refresh this, mute this. I have deployed what I'm going to do is also join the same room from my mobile device. So what you're going to see over here is me using the website, and now I'm on my iOS device right here, all right? And this button over here, when I click this, it does the functionality where it sends a snapshot request. As you can see, the remote camera disappeared for a second. That's because on iOS, only one person can handle the camera. So it took a snapshot of me, and then over here, I sent a message received, and I displayed the snapshot over here. So you can see while I was talking, it took a picture, sent it back over here. So here I can send normal messages, hello, which should be fine. And on the other side, I can also do something smart like send a snapshot request. Let me do that again, say hello, hey. And once that's sent, it'll get updated and I'll get another message and it'll get displayed over here. Perfect. And the other thing that's going to happen on my iOS end is when I say disconnect, it gets disconnected from both ends. Cool. So that was my demo. Let me get back to the screen. Again, as I mentioned, all this code that I have shown over here is going to be up on GitHub, and so will be the webinar video. So you can go back and look at the code, how it's done, what kind of JSON structures I've used, and how I've used that to send messages across. The other thing you can also get with the iOS sample is the integration between how I've used this to do a file transfer, right? So I didn't actually send the image across directly, but what I did was I used an S3 bucket on Amazon, and I uploaded the file out there and just sent a URL across to my other end who can see. So it could be literally any kind of files. It could be PDFs, images, any other data you want to share across.